Hey, let's take a moment to talk about scales. Scales that we have on offer for the Zenith 7. Let's start with the sweet scales, the major scales. First one listed is Ysha, which is a D center, and then A, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G, A. I love this scale. It's a very sweet scale, so it's a little bit hard to move away from that sweetness if that's what you're looking for. Things to consider is that what I look at is that second note, the C sharp. That's going to be a real, it's the seventh of the scale, so it is wanting to resolve into the next note, which would be the D or the root or the octave. Other things to consider is that this is rooted in D major, so if you're specifically looking for D major, this would be the scale because it has that C sharp. What I like about this scale is that it has C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G, A, all sequentially in a row, so the top end of the scale is really stacked. That's important for me in terms of like composing and big classical chord changes. Having that closeness of all those notes really kind of lends itself to that. Which moves kind of right into the next scale, which is Mixo. This has been the single scale that has really wooed the most people in person in the shop. People will come in here and say like, I don't really like major scales, and I say, I hear that, but try this one. And a lot of people have kind of been moved by this scale. So kind of the same thing, similar to Ysha. The top end, it has D, E, F sharp, G, A all squished together in sequence. So for the same reasons, it's nice to have those stacked together. The A, B in the bottom end is going to be a little bit kind of softer and more forgiving, and because of that, maybe you can do a little more with it, where the C sharp of the Ysha is a little bit more defined. So Mixo, again, a very popular one, one that has surprised a lot of people, and definitely one of my favorites. The next one, Dorian, is just a really light mix off the Mixo. It's just one note is different. So the bottom end is A, C, D. And so what's different than Mixo and Ysha with Dorian is that it has the C natural, not the C sharp. And so it gives this kind of like false lead in that it could be a minor scale, but then you get the F sharp, which makes it kind of swing more major. So this one is kind of a little bit of a sleeper scale in that it doesn't get ordered a bunch, but it's a really great scale, and it's just a little more defined in flavor. So it is major, but it's kind of not as classically major as the first two, Ysha and Mixo. And then the last one in the sweet scale category is Arrezo. I really like this scale a lot. It's kind of the other argument is that it has the bottom end, A, B, C sharp, D, E, and F sharp all stacked together. And then it extends up to the high A. So it gives the high A like a bit of a different character. Within all those three scales, four scales, it's going to be a resolution, because it's the upper fifth or the upper octave of the A and the fifth of the center note, so it's always going to resolve there. But having this kind of gap at the top makes that higher note kind of almost feel like a little bit of a cherry on top. So kind of for the other reasons than Mixo, Arrezo is really strong because it's got 6 of the 7 notes all stacked. And so again, from like a classical melodic percussion or melodic compositional standpoint, Arrezo is really strong in that sense. So let's talk about the minor scales, savory scales that are on offer. This category has the most scales on offer for the Zenith 7. So right out of the gates, Celtic is kind of the classic softer minor scale. I'll use some kind of food analogies here. So for me, the savory scales, Celtic is kind of like a milk chocolate. It's definitely chocolate, but it's not as rich and as dark as you can get. And there's advantages to that. Celtic is a little bit undefined. It is minor, but it's not distinctly minor. So from a playing perspective, I can kind of be in control of exactly how that flavor feels. And with the other scales, having the C, D, E, F, G, A in a row gives me a lot of kind of closeness, which I like for compositional reasons and kind of big chord progressions. But it is a lightly softer of the minor, and part of what makes it really nice is it's really user-friendly. So the next one is Insen, which again is just a light variation. It's just you change that C natural in the Celtic to a B flat. But what that does is that C natural is kind of a leading note. It wants you to resolve to the root note that is D. And switching that C to a B flat brings in a much more distinct minor feel. And the reason is because the B flat would be the sixth of the scale, or in this case, the diminished sixth. So the combination of the center note being in D and the first note being A, and having the next note be B flat, you get these really strong, distinct, kind of like classic minor chords, and you can build a lot off of that. And so why I like Insen is it has the A B flat relationship, but then it still has D E F G A stacked, which, as you know, I like having a certain amount of notes stacked up on each other. Just makes for really kind of quick and classic compositions. So kind of moving on is Mystic, and so Mystic does things a little bit differently. It has that A B flat in the bottom, and then it kind of goes more pentatonic on top, meaning it's more spread out in what notes it has. It doesn't have that tighter closeness that like a Celtic or Insen has, but what it does do that those don't is that it goes up beyond the high A, it goes up to the high C. And so that is really like very much the cherry on top kind of note. So what you lose with the Mystic is kind of the closeness and the stacked notes that the Insen has. What you gain, though, is this kind of extension up to this high C, which is just like a distinctly different flavored note to kind of go up beyond the high A. So there's a lot of strengths with Mystic because it has the A-B flat relationship, but it also has the extension, but it loses out a little bit for me, and it doesn't have that closeness. And then that kind of leads us into the two minor scales, the minor pentatonic scales. One is just called D minor, and so it's kind of like a mix between Celtic and Mystic, and it kind of gains the power from the Mystic in that it has the extension, and it loses the B flat tension. So this particular scale, both the pentatonics are really user friendly. You do get the kind of high-end extension. You don't have the kind of drama that the Mystic brings, but if that's not what you're looking for, then these become really easy players. And so right below it, the D minor pentatonic, super similar. It's just one note changes. Either you get the E or the G, depending on which. The D minor pentatonic has a little bit of what we might call kind of like an Asian flair. The reason is that our minor pentatonic, our Western minor pentatonic, is really similar to some of the scales that are used, or even the same as some Asian music, like akebono is an example that we've used in handpan. So it has a little bit of that flair. So if that's something you're looking for, then that might be the scale for you. So that's the minor scales. All right, moving on to the harmonic minor scales, or the spicy category. Now, if you've never played a handpan before, or if this is going to be your first handpan, I usually try to steer people away from the harmonic minors, simply because they're not quite as user-friendly, and they're really distinct in their flavor. So of the two, Orion is a little less distinct in its flavor because of that second note. Again, it's that C as opposed to the B flat that we find in the Hijaz. So of the two, Orion is a little more forgiving because of that. And one thing I like to do with Orion is it's note number 4, the E flat. That is a diminished ninth, which again is, you should just hear like that is a really big place to build tension. So one thing you can do is if you leave out the E flat while you're playing, you can kind of fall almost into this kind of false major, similar to the Dorian scale that I have on offer. So that is kind of a nice trick, that you can kind of play in this false major, but then you can drop in the E flat and bring it into this really kind of spicy harmonic minor feel. And so Hijaz is probably the most extreme example of and defined harmonic minor, because you have the diminished sixth in the B flat, so you have that big tension note, and then you have D, and then you have E flat, which is the diminished ninth, which is like a really strong flavor in a scale. And then it goes E flat, F sharp, G, A, so you get kind of the classic step and a half, which really gives the very distinct harmonic minor feel. So in general, harmonic minors are not the most user-friendly, but if that's something that you're interested in or something you're trying to do within your music, then they're really powerful, and they do that really well. So that's my spiel about scales. I hope that was helpful, and good luck.